Hey there Cosmic Warriors, and welcome back to another video. And if you are new here, my name is Hannah. I am an astrologer and I make videos all about astrology. Okay, so in today's video we're going to be talking about the 5 things you need to know about this full moon in Aries taking place on the 9th of October 2022, so stay tuned. But before we do dive into today's video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe and click the bell. And if you are interested in a personal reading from myself, then you can visit my website hannahselsewhere.com. There you can also find my Practical Astrology ebooks and merch. All the links will be in the description box down below. I do hope that you find this video to be helpful today. Let's do this. Alright, so the first thing you need to know about this full moon in Aries is that the moon will oppose the sun in Libra at 16 degrees, creating the number 7 in numerological terms. And 7 represents things like knowledge, wisdom, curiosity, philosophy, wholeness, spirituality, and intuition. Therefore, this full moon is part of something much bigger. It's part of something much more spiritual and profound. There's also a very healing quality to this full moon. There is a lot of inner wisdom to be gained during it. Perhaps by paying attention and listening very closely to our inner world, we can tap into something wise, or we might discover new knowledge, creating more self-awareness, greater self-awareness and greater understanding. And hopefully with that awareness, we can change our actions. We can change how we assert ourselves, how we initiate. Keeping in mind, Aries is a sign of action and self-assertion. Now, this is very interesting because back when there was a new moon in Aries, so that was on the 1st of April 2022, Jupiter was in Pisces. But currently in the sky, Jupiter is retrograde in Aries, and it will re-enter Pisces at the end of October for a few weeks. And when I looked at my journal, how I felt during that new moon in Aries, well, I'm noticing similar patterns, similar themes coming up. And I can't help but think there is something symbolic and revitalizing about the movement of Jupiter. It's giving us an opportunity to revisit how we were feeling back then, given that Jupiter will station retrograde in Pisces, and then the new moon was in Aries whilst Jupiter was in Pisces back then. So for me, I do see here as we approach this full moon that I've changed, I've moved forward with a lot of things in comparison to back then. But there's still some things that I would like to release. There's still some things that are familiar, that are similar rather to back then, that I would like to revisit. Though perhaps Jupiter and Chiron, both transiting my 8th house, have also contributed to a lot of this introspection that I've been going through lately. Still, during the retrograde in Pisces, I will get a chance to revisit a few more emotional and spiritual things. In this respect, it could be suggested that we all will. But could it be that this full moon is an opportunity for us to release our anger, or to release any pain we feel, or to admit to ourselves that we have been wounded or we've been hurt in some way? Now, the reason why I bring this up, so looking at pain, is, well, it's the fact that the moon in Aries will also conjunct Chiron retrograde, but we will talk about that more in a moment. Still, this full moon packs it packs a punch. You might release things or address things or shine a light on things to do with anger, energy, inspiration, excitement, passion, motivation, or freedom. Or you may reap rewards to do with these things. Even thinking about how Aries is associated with goals, you might reap rewards there. And at the same time, with the sun being in Libra, there is a part of us that is striving for harmony within our relationships. There is a part of us that wants to restore some type of balance. This part of us that wants to experience more fruitful and rewarding relationships and connections with others. And so maybe it's realizing that we have a choice. You have a choice. You can choose peace or you can choose war. You can choose to create harmony or you can choose to create discord. You can choose to put your weapons down or to jump into battle. Naturally, choosing to fight or cooperate isn't a straightforward answer. And it's also not looking at these things as good or bad, okay? You have to think about the situation, context. But still, perhaps this full moon is reminding us of the balance. It's reminding us of the back and forth between our needs versus other people's needs. All right, so let's get into these signs. Let's say this full moon is taking place in your 10th house. So looking at you Cancer, Sun, Moon, and risings. Perhaps this is a period where you'll address the back and forth between your public and professional life versus your family and private life. Or maybe you'll reap rewards to do with your career or accomplishment goals, such as gaining a promotion or a raise, or it could be that you release anger or excitement that is related to work. It's related to your public image. Maybe there is wisdom and knowledge to be discovered from your release. Or let's say this full moon is taking place in your 6th house. So looking at you Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and risings, perhaps this is a period where you'll address the back and forth between your working and everyday life versus your behind the scenes and relaxation life. Or maybe you'll reap rewards to do with your daily or health goals, such as receiving a helping hand or getting good advice from a health professional. Or it could be that you release anger or excitement that is related to your daily routines and habits. Perhaps there is wisdom and knowledge to be discovered from your release. But then let's say this full moon is taking place in your 2nd house. So looking at you Pisces, Sun, Moon, and risings. Perhaps this is a period where you'll address the back and forth between your financial and security life versus your intimate and deeply private life. Or maybe you will reap rewards to do with your income or your talent goals, such as receiving some spare money or progressing in a class that you're taking. Or it could be that you release anger or excitement that is related to your investments or your spending habits. And so in this way, there is plenty of wisdom and knowledge to be gained from your release. The second thing you need to know about this full moon, like I said, it will conjunct Chiron retrograde in Aries. Now, this is very significant because the new moon in Aries also made a conjunction to both the sun and moon in Aries back in April. Okay, like I said, that new moon in Aries took place on the 1st of April. And so whatever intentions you were setting back then when it came to healing, repairing, mending, fixing, well, these things are going to come full circle. You know how I was explaining a moment ago that similar themes and patterns are replaying? Well, I feel like they're sort of replaying emotionally for me. Well, I think this is because over the last 6 months, yes, I've been addressing all of the heavy stuff, but it must be that there's other parts of the cycle that I need to address this time round. Yeah, I've had to go within quite a bit and I'm trying to not repeat the same cycles and cycles over and over, but it's so challenging. Yeah, it's never a straightforward thing. And I guess in a way, the moon is all about cycles and astrology is all about cycles as well. It shows us our patterns, but it is up to us to break them or to change something. So you might relate in some way to this whole breaking of cycles and moving forward, or you might even relate to the whole reoccurring of cycles and how it's difficult to break them. Still, Chiron in Aries has been bringing up themes to do with our lack of self-assertion, our fears of putting ourselves first. Gosh, I feel this so deeply. Our hesitation to be courageous and brave, our hesitation to join in, to initiate, to begin something. The rage we feel on the inside when we don't assert ourselves or stand up for ourselves. Again, I'm feeling this very heavily. I do have my moon in Aries, so that's perhaps partly why I can relate to all of this so much. See, it's such things that can stem from some type of wound or some type of insecurity. They can stem from past attacks, past hurts, past rejections, past mistakes, past failures. But with the moon conjunct Chiron retrograde, we have an opportunity to address these things head on. We can be our own cheerleaders or our own supporters. We can learn to fight our corner and to be direct, perhaps by being super honest with ourselves. Okay, Aries is a very honest sign. We can experience, again, hopefully, more rewarding relationships. Yeah, it is time to stop hiding and to stop being ashamed of our identity. Whilst things aren't going to change overnight, okay, after all, Chiron will continue to be in Aries for a good few years still, but perhaps we can address what we can address during this full moon will be a step in the right direction, okay? Step by step. By addressing our internal fears and our internal battles, maybe we can become more unified with others. Of course, keeping in mind that Sun in Libra opposition. So, let's say this full moon is taking place in your first house. So looking at you, Aries, Sun, Moon, and risings. Perhaps this is a period where you'll address the back and forth between your individuality versus your relationships. And whilst you might release anger or excitement related to your identity, maybe you also recognize how much you have healed and how much you have grown, or how much you would like to move away from emotive behaving or acting. You feel a strong push to really drive forward, because not only do you want to feel more sure about your life path, your future direction, but you also want to experience more healthy relationships with partners and close friends. Or let's say this full moon is taking place in your 9th house. So looking at you, Leo, Sun, Moon, and risings. Perhaps this is a period where you'll address the back and forth between your higher meaning versus your daily interactions. And whilst you might release anger or excitement related to your worldview, maybe you also notice how much you have healed or grown, or how much you would like to move away from a certain belief. You might feel a strong push to want to really move forward, because not only do you want to feel more sure about your future aspirations, but you also want to experience more balanced and healthy relationships with relatives or with your peers. But then let's say this full moon is taking place in your 5th house. So looking at you, Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and risings. Maybe this is a period where you'll address the back and forth between your children or your hobbies versus your friendships or your future hopes. And whilst you might release anger or excitement related to your inner child, maybe you also notice how much you have healed and grown, but you also notice how much you would like to move away from a way of maybe expressing yourself. You feel a strong push to drive forward because not only do you want to feel really more sure about your interests and your pleasures, but you also want to experience more healthy and balanced relationships with friends or with people who are part of your team. The third thing you need to know about this full moon in Aries is that it will oppose Venus in Libra. And of course, the sun will be conjunct Venus as well. Okay, so if you didn't think the full moon will have a big focus on relationships, I really hope you can see this very obviously now, because Venus is home in the sign of Libra and it's sitting right across from the moon. And Venus, of course, is all about things like unity, connecting, relating, cooperating, relationships. And with it making a conjunction to the sun in Libra, we will want to relate with others. We will want to join together and exchange ideas. We will want to get along and have important intellectual discussions. During this full moon, we will want to turn our charm on. But if things aren't so fair or polite, there will also be a part of us that will want to express how we feel about it. And the manner in which we bring it up won't be thoughtful or courteous, especially if someone angers us or upsets us or just pisses us off, they get on our nerves. Indeed, there is a strong push and pull effect between ourselves and others, given that the sun and moon are in Libra and Aries, and so they are making an opposition to each other. Maybe there is something annoying you that you need to get off your chest, for example, and so during this new moon you do it. You would rather just let it out instead of acting like everything is fine, everything is normal. Better to address any issues or problems head on rather than pretending, rather than coming across as fake. And who knows, maybe the person we are directing our frustrations towards, perhaps they have a thing or two to add or to share. And so in this respect, you can have that discussion. Naturally, of course, be careful not to be super aggressive or pushy or demanding. I think it's more about being direct. It's more about being assertive. So if you have something to share it directly, whilst also being just a bit considerate of the other person. I mean, others don't typically react well to an attack. That much is obvious. Therefore, I suppose you could say that this full moon, it is giving us an opportunity to just clear the air and to resolve any unhealthy or unbalanced relationship habits. This is a time to be brave and to be courageous, to address any relationship wounds head on so that we can repair things. Of course, Chiron will oppose Venus as well. And if we discover along the way that a relationship can't be repaired or helped, well, that's also more knowledge, okay? That's something else to learn from. Better to know than to continue beating a dead horse or pretending. Yeah, this full moon is a great time to really address our relationships and to look at a few hard truths along the way. And even if we don't necessarily address these hard truths directly with our friends, with our partners, with our relatives and so on, well, we can do these things internally. Maybe we can talk about these internal things with somebody different, with somebody professional maybe, or we can just look within ourselves and try to get a deeper understanding of what's going on. Still, let's say this full moon is taking place in your 11th house, so looking at you Gemini, sun, moon and risings. Perhaps this is a period where you'll address the back and forth between your communities and group involvements versus your interests and your creative projects. And whilst you realize how much you have healed and grown when it comes to your non-conforming ideas, there is also something you wish to repair within your teams and alliances. Perhaps you bring a new creative idea to the table, for example, or you make it clear that you want to move forward from a future goal situation that you've been thinking over. But then let's say this full moon is taking place in your 7th house. So looking at you, Libra, sun, moon and risings. Perhaps this is a period where you'll address the back and forth between your relationships and partnerships versus your identity and your direction. And whilst you notice how much you have healed or grown when it comes to your shadow, for example, there's also something you wish to repair with a close friend or with your significant other. Maybe you suggest a new money venture or a new way of handling money, or you make it clear that you want to move forward from a contract situation that you've been thinking over. The 4th thing you need to know about this full moon in Aries is that it will sextile Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, and there will actually be a grand trine. Saturn will be in Aquarius, the Sun and Venus will be in Libra, and then of course Mars will be in Gemini. So there is this opportunity for us to create something great using our smarts, and perhaps we can communicate more effectively, or at least more effectively than we have the last few weeks, given that Mercury was retrograde. Still, more on Gemini and Libra in a moment, okay? With Saturn making a sextile to the moon, maybe we can control and manage our emotions rather than reacting instantly. Perhaps we'll consider the action plan rather than jumping straight into action without thinking things through. And this is important because not only are we coming out of a very intense Mercury retrograde, but Mars will station retrograde at the end of October, right up until the beginning of January. And I can't help but think that this strong retrograde season has somehow been preparing us for what is to come during the Mars retrograde. We are learning a lot about patience and slowing down, and we need this from time to time, right? We need times when we can think things over, times when we decompress, times to check things over, and times to talk things over as well internally, rather than saying the first thing that comes to our minds. Naturally, living in the world we live in where everything is so instant, slowing down to take a breather can be a bit of a challenge. Often our lives don't align with retrograde energy, especially if you want something to go your way. But there are delays and you have to wait, you have to be patient. Still, maybe this Saturn sextile to the moon can give us some time to focus and to just reconsider the long term, reconsider the plan. Maybe sometime waiting can help us, oddly enough, in the long run. I mean, taking a short break can be great. We need breaks, we need rest, we need time to recharge our batteries. Also, walking away from a project that you're working on can be good because then you can have some time to reflect and to come up with new ideas. By revisiting a subject or a conversation, you might notice something very different, something else that can be added to the story, to the discussion. Having a pair of fresh eyes can do wonders for our creativity and our growth. Therefore, during this full moon, be steady. Hold your focus and your vision. Think before you react. Be patient with yourself and others. And step away from your goals from time to time in order to gain different perspectives. So let's say this full moon is taking place in your 3rd house. So looking at you, Aquarius, sun, moon and risings. Perhaps this is a period where you'll address the back and forth between your communicative skills versus your further learning. And whilst you realize how much you've healed and grown mentally, you also slow down when it comes to any intellectual or educational projects you're working on. It could be that these projects are connected to your future, and so you'll hold your vision. You'll want to focus, but you'll also accept that things will happen gradually, and waiting isn't necessarily a bad thing. As an Aquarius, I can relate to this. I'm currently working on an astrology guide, and I've been really just taking my time with it. It took me a long time to even come up with the structure, and after half a year of working on it, I'm having to restructure everything again just reminding myself that, you know, it's all part of the building process. It's all part of the creative process. But then let's say this full moon is taking place in your 12th house. So looking at you, Taurus, sun, moon, and risings. Perhaps this is a period where you'll address the back and forth between your spiritual and alone life versus your working and everyday life. And whilst you realize how much you've healed and grown spiritually and emotionally as well, you also slow down when it comes to any intuitive or retreating goals you've been working on. Perhaps these projects are connected to your career or accomplishments, so you'll focus and you'll hold your vision. But you'll also accept that you can't control the process and that things will unfold on their own time schedule. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And the fifth and final thing you need to know about this full moon in Aries taking place on the 9th of October 2022 is Mars, the dispositor of this full moon, will be in Gemini, which will trine both the Sun and Venus in Libra. All right, so this is some lovely harmonizing and social energy, meaning we feel more of an urge to get out there and to meet new people, or it's that we release a few things to do with socializing, networking, and connecting. For instance, perhaps you discover that people aren't as scary as you think, or most people are in the same boat, or there are people who will like you and there are people who won't, and it's okay not to be everybody's cup of tea. We all have different interests and likes, and we're more than likely going to get along with people who enjoy the same things we do. We all have different sides to our personalities, and even with our differences, we can accept one another and just be curious about one another as well. Let's just say this is a big social moon. Yes, Aries can be a lone wolf, and yes, there can be times during this full moon when we want to just do our own thing. But with Mars and Gemini, there's also a part of us that can't seem to stop yapping. There are times when we want to inquire about others and gain new information. We want to share, teach, exchange, entertain, and laugh. Oh, and we want to be liked, even if we might not admit it. Though perhaps the challenge here is overcoming our social fears, our social insecurities, or just our personal insecurities and our worries. So on that note, let's say this full moon is taking place in your 8th house. So looking at you, Virgo, sun, moon, and risings. Perhaps this is a period where you will address the back and forth between intimacy and your self-worth. But you'll also feel a stronger urge to socialize with members of the public, with people online, and perhaps by being curious about others, you can actually feel good about yourself. Maybe you want to network more or teach and share in a new way. And these things can impact your self-worth, hopefully in a positive way. And at the same time, you've been working through your own intimacy, insecurities, and fears. I mean, I know for myself, as someone with a Virgo rising, October is going to be a much more social month for me. And whilst, yes, I have some insecurities connected with socializing, it's also good because I want to put myself out there more. I want to gain better communication skills and not feel so anxious in social settings. Maybe you Virgo, sun, moon, and risings can relate. But then let's say this full moon is taking place in your 4th house. So looking at you, Capricorn, sun, moon, and risings. Perhaps this is a period where you'll address the back and forth between your home and family life versus your public and career life. But you'll also feel a stronger urge to socialize with co-workers, for example, with people you meet throughout your everyday life. And perhaps by being curious about others, you can establish greater professional relationships, or you will feel really good about yourself in front of the public. Maybe you want to advertise or market yourself differently, just in a whole new way. And these things can impact your reputation in a beneficial way. And at the same time, you've been working through your own private insecurities and fears, looking even at your family there, looking at your home life. Okay then, Cosmic Warriors, so that concludes my video talking about the 5 things you need to know about this full moon in Aries taking place on the 9th of October 2022. Please let me know if you found this video to be helpful today. I would really appreciate that. And as always, please let us know your thoughts and your opinions in the comment section down below. But with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And of course, if you would like to see more videos from myself and you have not yet subscribed, then make sure that you click that subscribe button and also give this video a like if you did like it today. And I will be back with another video very, very soon. Bye! Happy full moon!